Hey, folks, good evening and welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Personal Reports, where I narrate some of the more recent and past cryptid and unexplained sightings and encounters submitted to Phantoms and Monsters. I will also detail current and past investigations on occasion. So thanks for joining me. First of all, the Phantoms and Monsters radio channel is made possible by you clicking the subscribe button and by you sharing our programming. Super chat and super thanks donations are appreciated. And the Buy Me a Coffee link and banner are also shown below. So thanks for your consideration. So let's get started. This first one is about a group of friends that are driving at night in LaPorte County, Indiana, in the woods and just over the border from Michigan. They encountered what they said was a small troll that was covered in blood that was feeding on a deer carcass. So the witness states that this occurred around the time I graduated or sometime shortly after in 1995. My family lived in Michigan at the time, fairly close to the Indiana border. Some friends that I played Dungeons and Dragons with got all into ghost hunting, and we'd often travel down around the Indiana side in LaPorte County, which was around 45 minutes away, I believe. And now on this particular night, we had picked up the girl I was dating. Her and I were sitting in the back seat while my two buddies were in the front seat. We're on a somewhat secluded 2-lane road with thick woods on the right side of us. I'm not trying to be vague at this point. I really don't remember much about the area or exactly where we were. And John says, "Don't trust what you see around here. I hear your eyes play tricks on you in this area." Almost on cue, we started seeing what basically looks like black fog or shadows darting and swimming across the road in the lights of the headlights. We remain calm and keep going. Eventually, the road tees off to the right into the woods, and we take a turn. Now, after about a quarter mile, the road either goes straight onto gravel or tees to the left. So we take the left. At this point, we're driving slow, maybe 5 miles an hour, and both the girlfriend and I are looking out the passenger side window. I was on the passenger side, if that matters. And about 15 feet into the woods, I see what looks like a small old troll hunched over eating something bloody and messy with its backs to us. Now, my mind immediately went to folklore, and I think red cap as soon as I see it, even though it wasn't wearing a thing. I slowly turned to my girlfriend because it's a bit much to see, and not think you're crazy, and her eyes were taking up her whole face. She already had started tearing up, and they started streaming down her face when she looks at me. She's petrified. We both tell my friends in the front that we need to go. There's something in the woods. She's basically crying, and I'm freaking out too. The two in the front didn't see it, and they're frantic to know what we saw and want to drive by again, which the two of us want nothing to do with. So about 100 yards later, the road turns to the right onto the gravel, and the driver decides we're going to turn around here and go back the way we came. We get turned around, and as we start off the gravel, the car dies. Not a clutch issue. It was an automatic and pretty unexplainable engine quit. The girlfriend flat out starts screaming, and the driver says to relax, tries to turn the engine over, and thankfully it starts. However, the moment the car turns over, the headlights immediately turn on. Mind you, it's pitch black out. There are no street lights. It's a heavily wooded area, and we hadn't seen another car in who knows how long. Never mind the fact that our car and headlights were just facing where this car appeared when we were trying to turn around. So at this point, everybody decides, okay, we're obviously somewhere we shouldn't be. We're out. So we end up driving back by the area we saw the small old troll, and there's nothing there now. No little troll, no deer. I believe it was a deer it was eating when I first saw it. We get to the area that branched off to the gravel road. When we first went into the area, as we approach this road, a set of headlights turns on from the gravel road as well, followed by other headlights. So in this car, there's the four of us freaking out, believing we stumbled into some weird occult stuff we didn't mean to. And all we want to do is go back home now. We drive back out to the main two-lane highway, or out the two-lane road that took us this way, and the other cars go on their own separate way uneventfully. Now, it's been over 20 years, and I still get chills thinking about this. The little gnarly troll bunched over eating the deer is just as vivid as it ever was. A lot of weird things happened when I lived in Bridgman, Michigan area. This was the most extreme, but I had about 20 years of unexplained experiences crammed into the 2 years I lived there. To describe the red cap further, from what I remember, it was naked. I believe it would have been maybe 3.5 foot tall if it stood upward, and very stocky. It was squatting down low, its butt almost to the ground while it ate, and also somewhat hairy, as in hairy on its shoulders and back. There was blood all over its hands and forearms. It was holding what looked like the leg of the deer. There was a mess of the rest of it at its feet. I had about a 3/4 view of it, mostly its back. I didn't get a good view of its face, though. It kind of glanced over his shoulder at us nonchalantly as we drove by. I just remember it looked old, menacing, like the furious little 70-year-old man, so unnerving to say the least. So, that's one I don't get too often, little trolls, especially out in the middle of the woods eating on something. So, now, if you folks have questions, just go ahead and, James asked, did the creature have hair all over, even if light or in the thick patches? It probably did. I mean, from what I can understand, it definitely had hair on its back and arms from what they could see. So, yeah, of course it was naked. So I don't know. Other than that, that's all that was described, and didn't describe the feet at all. I don't think they got a good look at that, but it's pretty bizarre. Okay. Is that it? Okay. What's a red cap? A red cap is basically, I think a lot of people call gnomes red caps. You see the so-called gnomes, and they always got a red cap. Maybe that's what he thought it was, a gnome or something like that. Picture right there. So I don't know. That's what he had in the account. So that's what I mentioned. Okay, we'll get back to that. The witness this next one, the witness in Southeast Ontario had fallen from a tree and landed on his back. After waking from unconsciousness, he notices a juvenile Bigfoot watching him. Then a much larger Bigfoot appears. The witness, and he asked that his name not be mentioned, then 15, was camping with his uncle in a wooded area in June 2014 in Southeast Ontario. They arrived on a Saturday and enjoyed themselves, though it was fairly uneventful. Now, on the third day, the witness hiked out of the camp on his own and decided to climb a tree in order to take pictures of the nearby creek with his camera. When he was about 10 foot up the tree, he accidentally slipped and fell. The witness passed out. When it came to, the witness figured that he had been out for about an hour to 90 minutes. Now, he says, what struck me was strange. Once I gained my senses, I awoke on my side. Now, to my knowledge, I had passed out on my back. I sat up slowly and tried to take in my surroundings. Then it hit me. The most disgusting odor I've ever experienced. It was a mix of wet dog and becruded fecal matter and vomit. The heat didn't help the matter either. I thought that it may have been a rotting carcass of a woodland animal, but my theory was thwarted when I saw it in the shrub. Now, roughly 15 foot away from me was a tanned face It had orange eyes which set in concave eye sockets. I can make out that it had a lot of fur, but it contrasted greatly from its skin color. I assumed that it was brown in color. The face was around 5 foot above the ground. My first instinct wasn't to think Bigfoot or anything of that nature, but it was either 5 foot tall or crouching. I have no idea how long it had been there, but it was watching me. It didn't once move. In fact, it barely blinked. It sat in silence, peering out of the bushes at me as I stirred out of unconsciousness. I'd be a liar to say I wasn't scared. I was more confused, actually. Now, never once did I feel that I was in any immediate danger. What happened next shook me to my core, and I can confidently say it kind of messed me up. The forelegs behind this creature rustled slightly, and to my sheer horror, emerged another one of these creatures. It was easily 10 foot tall, covered in auburn hair, matted around the shoulders, which were wider than my arms would be if they were extended outwards, measuring from fingertip to fingertip. It shared a similar facial structure to the smaller one, but its skin was more of a brown color. It stopped beside what I now assume was its offspring. The little one continued to stare at me intently while the larger creature, I'm assuming its mother, simply brushed its shoulder with a soft hand to grab its attention. Now, the larger one never looked at me. The two creatures turned their backs and simply walked into the woods. I assumed that the mother was simply telling the younger one it was time to, just to leave me alone and give me space. It does make me wonder, though, did they find me laying there unconscious and then put me on my side? Was the reason that I wouldn't choke on my tongue or have a seizure? So that came from Steve over at howtohunt.com. When it was we transcribed it from his video. Pretty interesting account. And he does get some interesting accounts. You ought to go there, and the facts of howtohunt.com. It's a very, very good YouTube channel. So let's see. We got any other questions? Oh, Brad, thank you for the donation. Okay. Now, this next one, the witness and his father are deer hunting in Hell's Canyon in northern Idaho. They eventually observe a bizarre knot deer with front legs that resemble those of a muscular human man. Now, I got this account from Cam and Cow over at Expanded Perspectives. They have their own radio show, and they send me reports occasionally that come their way. The witness states, I've been listening to a bunch of the older shows and heard you guys talk about what you call a knot deer, and was amazed that someone else had seen something like that. I had to write in and tell you my sighting. I was about 15 years old, and I was going rifle hunting with my dad in the Hell's Canyon area of northern Idaho, not far from where we lived. I had been bow hunting with my dad for about 5 years at that point, and he decided it was now old enough to use a gun. We went out to my dad's tree stand early one morning. We had been there for a few hours and had not really heard or seen anything. Then about 50 yards away, we saw a buck peek its head out into the clearing. It was a beautiful 8-point. I raised my rifle and waited for it to step more into the clearing. Looking at it through my scope, I noticed something off about the way it moved. Now, as it came more into the open, I noticed the fur looked weird by the front shoulder. I told my dad maybe we shouldn't shoot this one as it may be diseased or something. My dad pulled up his binoculars and took a look. Under his breath, he said, WTF. Now, my dad, outside of watching sports, never cusses. So it caught me off guard. I raised my gun to look at it again. The deer was fully in clear now, so I could get a good look at it. The front legs weren't actually legs at all. They looked like muscular human arms, as if it was a buff guy in a suit, but it didn't have hands. It had hooves on the end. I asked my dad what to do, and he said, I have no idea. Shoot your gun in the air to scare it off. He didn't want me to shoot it in case it was a person. I asked my dad, well, why would a person dress as a deer deep in the woods during hunting season? He replied, people are stupid. So I assumed he was trying to stay calm as he could. I was about to freak out. I fired my gun and it took off. Now, we got out of our stand and walked to the area where we saw it. There were no tracks at all. It had just rained a few days earlier, so the ground was fairly soft and we could have easily seen our footprints. My dad is a pretty good tracker, but he saw no signs of anything in the area. He decided to pack up. We decided to pack up and head back to the truck. We never really talked about it again, just brushed it off as a weird thing we saw. We continued to hunt the area for several years after that. You know, these knot deer are really some crazy sightings. You know, it was this, you know, since they didn't see any prints, was this an actual being or was this some type of apparition or something? I don't know. But we do get these weird sightings every once in a while. And, you know, and James says, it does. It happens in Pennsylvania too. We get some pretty bizarre knot deer sightings in this state. So I think I pretty well had a knot deer sighting in every state in the country, mostly. So yeah, it's pretty weird phenomenon. Now this other account, this witness is a grandmother recalls her encounter with a praying mantis humanoid when she was a child in the Greenville, South Carolina trailer park. She experienced possibly reproductive intrusion. Now, she states, hi, I'm a 42-year-old female, married with grown children and 5 grandchildren. First of all, since this encounter, I've never forgotten it, although exactly what happened is a mystery to me. I was young and we lived in a trailer park in Greenville, South Carolina, in Mr. Hickham's trailer park. This would have been around the mid-1970s. All this information has been confirmed by my mother. It was a warm, sunny day. I was playing outside with my 2 older brothers. I was the youngest of 3. It was a day like all the others. We were playing tag or hide and go seek or, whatever. I went to hide. I ran around the back of our home and suddenly I almost ran into a humanoid praying mantis. Now, at the time, I thought it was a giant insect. I could not really comprehend what I was seeing. I felt like all the breath was taken out of me. It was taller than my dad and it was standing next to our propane tank. Now, years later, when I thought about it, I told myself that maybe there was a gas leak. Anyway, back to the mantis. I stood there frozen in broad daylight and the creature was just staring back at me. And then everything's blank until I come running back into our trailer screaming that I'm in pain between my legs. My mother is so concerned that she pulled down my shorts and underwear to inspect. She says nothing is wrong and I go to sleep crying. This has always been with me. It and this praying mantis stays in the back of my mind. Then a few years ago, I heard about this UFO sighting reported by Highland, Illinois Police Department. Weird, I thought. We moved up there when I was 7 and moved back to South Carolina when I was 10 years old. I was telling my husband about this thing that happened when I was a kid. We both laughed and I swore it really did happen. So I got curious and Googled the praying mantis aliens. I remember it felt like I was punched in the stomach as I sat there looking at it, imaginary, exactly how I saw it over 30 years ago. Their imagery of what I saw 30 years ago. I showed it to my husband and he was in shock. I don't know what happened to me between my encounter and when I came running in screaming about the burning down there. I had a real fear of monsters after that and a great deal of nightmares, but nothing like what I saw. It was all about bloody baby dolls in plastic bags, scooting their plastic bodies around and down the hallway trying to get me. Also, another reoccurring dream was a farmer type man in overalls and a pitchfork walking by all my family members just to get at me. Now, at the end of the dream, he would stab me in the chest. This dream started when I lived in Highland, Illinois. I was never able to give birth naturally either. I had to have C-sections. My father passed away at the age of 38 from lung cancer. I was only 15. It has not been an easy life for me, but I'm a Christian and I find comfort in God's word. I have tried to read more about this mantis human creature and have not gotten a lot of info. Usually, when I'm reading about it right before bed, I'll fall asleep very quickly and get nowhere. I'm reaching out because I feel like this is really happening, and just not to me. It doesn't matter to me to get any attention via printing a story. I just want to know if you have heard of others like me. And I did. I got in contact. Now, I got this report several years ago. This witness got a hold of me after I had gotten the reports of the praying mantis humanoids in the Hackettstown, New Jersey area, and then we started to investigate it. And actually, we did an episode of Monsters and Mysteries in America back in 2015, I think it was, on this. Now, as for possible physical contact, now this report was the first for me. I have since been involved with several physical contact cases, but that one was the first. Now, most people that have encountered these beings experience severe headaches and mental distress. Now, I mentioned to the witness to feel free to contact me if she ever wished to disclose any further information, but since that time, I haven't heard anything from her, so I don't know what has happened since then. No questions? Okay. Now, this next account is about a young Navajo man who grew up on the reservation in New Mexico. He recalls his family's tragic history at the hands of native witches and in turn skinwalkers. Now he states, I live in Gallup, New Mexico, and I am 21-year-old Navajo. I have family that lives on a plot of land south of Gallup. It's about a 30-minute drive to my family's land, and it's surprisingly not deep in the woods. It's a 30-minute drive to my family's land and is surprisingly not deep in the woods. I remember first being in close proximity with a witch when I was about 7. I was at my uncle's house. Our land has 3 homes on it. He and my mom and his girlfriend were drinking, and my uncle went to relieve himself out the front door. I remember he freaked out and said that there was a skinwalker outside. I freaked out, and his girlfriend said it was okay, that it was just Scooby-Doo, in an attempt to lessen my fear. Now, since it's been so long, I remember those important details only. After that, I have no memory of what happened. Now, that uncle died that year. I always think that what could have been between me and him, now that I feel so alone in my remaining family, isn't as cool as he was with me. Anyway, to be clear, I never have seen a witch, but these details are unfortunately true. Jump forward a couple of years, and I'm in the 8th grade. My grandpa, who lived with my mom and I, is in the hospital. So I ended up sleeping in his room because I always slept on my mom's floor due to being creeped out by the thoughts of a witch trying to peer inside my window or hearing the noise it could make. I wanted to sleep in there because he has cable in his room. His room is on the opposite end of the trailer where my mom slept. It's about 5 a.m. and I wake up in the most terrifying language I've ever heard. It sounded like a cross between a hyena and a pig. The constant chit-chat between whatever was outside and my grandpa's window haunted me in that instance. I listened for a couple seconds, but I covered my ears as hard as I could out of pure terror. I was the most scared I'd ever been. Now, after that ordeal, I went to my mom's room and crawled into her bed, telling her what happened and shaking a bit. I had school that morning, so when we went to start the car, I noticed in the area where I heard the noise, there was a trailer hitch, and sitting in it was a stray dog. My grandma hired the medicine man before or after that happened, and he said that the dog was in cahoots with the witches. I tried to get rid of him, but that dog always came back. It was skinny and skittish. I always had a bad vibe from that dog, but it doesn't happen, which doesn't happen because I love dogs. Now, after that encounter, I was truly scared of being left alone. A year later, during my freshman year in high school, my mom died. Whether or not those jealous witches contributed towards her death, I'll ponder once in a while. She died from a bad cold, mucus in her lungs. I was asleep in her room, but not on her bed. I went to bed about 10 p.m. in the morning. She was very weak and cold, like she was hallucinating, and didn't get under the blankets to keep warm. When I woke up, she was dead and sitting in the front of her bed. That day changed my life completely, as I've never stayed at that house regularly since she died. I stay with my dad now in town. My other grandpa said our family has been an active target of those witches. He said once in the 90s, when my uncles and their friends were at my grandma's land, they see a fire and a witch doing a dance ritual on the top of the mesa. They try to shoot at it. It sees them and they take off when their girlfriends freak out. They leave and that witch chases them out from wherever they are. Keep in mind, this area has a lot of trees and it isn't barren and flat like most Navajo Nation. My grandpa inferred that the witch followed my uncles back to where my family's land is. Now, my family and the evil history of the area that they settled at is real. I wouldn't type all this out if it weren't true. I don't like fake paranormal stories, and you wouldn't either if the paranormal was just a footstep away. After all the damage these witches have done, no one wants to talk about it or do anything about them. What is there to do? It's been 6 years now since my mom died, and each day is a day I inch further away from my small memories of her. You know, this whole Skinwalker phenomenon, I have talked to a lot of Dene Navajo out in the Four Corners area and parts of New Mexico and in Arizona for a lot of years. Started when I was associated with J.C. Johnson and Leonard Dan, Chief Leonard Dan, and we got a lot of reports. I mean, a lot of the younger folks would come forward. But the older generation did not like to talk about it. They really shied away from it. And quite frankly, I don't think we'd really get much information anymore for younger kids or younger folks talking about it. But, I do appreciate they do that, but a lot of times they get chewed out for contacting someone about the witches and about the shapeshifters and the skinwalkers. So, okay, let's get the next one here. Okay. This next report, a couple were at a Virginia lake snorkeling and camping for the night. They later noticed an unknown being stalking them wherever they go in the area around their campsite. Now, the witness states, this is the most terrifying thing that I have ever experienced. This happened 4 years ago when my boyfriend and I were still fresh into our relationship. Now, my sister had recommended to me a snorkeling trip would be a fun thing to do with him. We went to Lake Phoenix, located in Brunswick County, Virginia. It's a quarry surrounded by a campground that is best known for its crystal clear water and diving. There's apparently a helicopter and school bus that people dive down to see. Now, my boyfriend and I decided to go camping for the night. Now, while we were checking in, we separately both got a bad feeling about this place, but had kept it to ourselves until we left. So at first, it was a really good time. We snorkeled in the shallow area of the quarry, and although the depth of the water was a bit uncanny, I still was enjoying myself. The water is 65 foot deep, so once you swim out of the shallow area, it's immediately dropped off and it's pitch black. This is actually where I realized I'm terrified of water. Now, besides the dark, deep water, while we were swimming, there was something very scary about a lake that is perfectly still. I assume it's because it's a quarry and the water really doesn't have much of a current. Now, my boyfriend and I are winding down our night and we're back at our campsite. Now, we're camping in a grassy patch down in a grassy patch down a hill from the road. Our tent is pitched in the wooded area that our campsite is extended to, and just across the green is a campsite that looks well lived in, but our neighbors were out. Now, we're making hot dogs over the fire when our neighbors get back. It's nighttime now, and they immediately go to sleep. I'd say 20 or 30 minutes after they get back is when things started to become spooky. My boyfriend and I were chatting when we noticed a dark figure watching us from up the hill. Now, because of the shadow of the fire, we could not actually make out the characteristics of the figure. We knew it was staring directly at us, almost hiding behind our neighbor's truck. It had watched us for what felt like forever until it started walking down the road again. And we both watched it in dead silence, watching it walk behind the trees. The same ones connected to our campsite, but that always went in between us and it. I anticipated each time I'd see it walk forward out of behind the tree, then it suddenly stopped appearing. I was totally freaked out. Where did it go? I watched my boyfriend looking at what happened and thinking the same thing, but he had just shrugged it off, and naively I did too. So we actually ended up forgetting about it and went to the quarry late that night. And it was beautiful seeing the stars reflect against the water, but the deep, now all black water was terrifying to say the least. We walked back to our campsite, laid in our tent, and smoked a joint. I soon began to get an uneasy feeling, which I was trying to ignore, telling myself it's probably because I was high. Now, after some silence between us, my boyfriend says to me, "Do you feel like you're being watched, or we're being watched?" I said, "Why would you say that?" I was half joking, but serious because I was scared. My boyfriend wanted to go get it out of the tent, so we're standing by my car, and I got to this stupid idea that because being in the middle of the field is the safest place for us. My logic being, if someone was going to come at us, at least we'd be able to see them. So we're in the middle of the field, and when we see a similar looking black figure from earlier staring at us, it must have been about 20 yards away. We both noticed it while walking, and it's walking in the same direction as us. We change directions, and so does it. We tell one another if we change again, and it does too, that we're booking for the car. When we change, it follows, and we book it to the car. I watch it from my seat as it slowly walked back into the darkness while still staring in our direction. Now, my boyfriend at this point says to me, "Let's get out of here." I agree, but our camping gear is outside. We quietly get our things together, not trying to freak the other one out. Now, the weirdest part of the story, in my opinion, is the next part. My headlights weren't working, and there was a weird fog over my windshield that didn't go away no matter what we did. We had to drive out of the woods with only low beams and a strange fog over the window. Now, we barely could see, but got out of there. Weirdly enough, the fog went away right as soon as we got to the gas station. Now, we got home around 1 a.m. I told my father the story the next day, and he said he's glad we got out of there, or else we could have been attacked. Now, 2 people have died in that campground while snorkeling, which I found out after we got back. My boyfriend and I think it was either a person trying to kill us or an upright creature. We kind of settled on the creature because what happened was an unexplained incident. Now, that's Brunswick County, Virginia, and it's well known for Bigfoot activity. Well known for Bigfoot activity. There's a lot of creeks and such in the area, and there have been a lot of sightings down there. It's not really too far from the North Carolina line. But I'm not sure what they encountered. So who knows whether Bigfoot or something else. So that's the last account. Does anybody have any questions? James asked, were they swimming during the day or nighttime? They were swimming during the day. Yeah. Did they note that they smelled anything odd? They didn't mention that. They didn't mention that at all. Anybody else got any more questions? I'm here to answer. Okay. Well, look, this, I had mentioned last Friday that we weren't going to have a show this Friday, but unfortunately I caught COVID. So I'm in quarantine, so I'm not going out. I had plans to go somewhere on Friday, and that didn't. So that kind of nixed that. So I'll be here, and we're going to have a show this Friday. We're going to present a question and answer session, which includes discussion of all kinds of Fortean phenomena, cryptids, metaphysical subjects that interest the listeners. You want to talk about crystals, you want to talk about hauntings, you want to talk about cryptids, anything you want to talk to. If you get in here, get into the chat and ask the question. We'll discuss it, and I'll answer it the best I can. So just join us in the live chat so that we can ask your questions and start the discussion. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to mention before we go. Apparently, now, of course, everybody knows about the Highland Park massacre on July 4th, the mass killing. Unfortunately, a DJ in the Chicago area came out today, I think, and stated that he thought that maybe this was a harbinger due to the Chicago Mothman. Which is just craziness. That's just ridiculous. And I'm just going to try to nix it. I didn't say anything about it. That's just crazy. So yeah. So I'm just saying it right now. So if anybody has any questions about that, then we'll just go ahead. And, I'm just going to say that did not happen. James said, can we call in on Friday? We don't have anything set up for call-ins yet unless Vincent figures something out by then. I know we eventually want to do that. Can you bring the guy with all the alien encounters? Well, I'm not bringing any guests on Friday night. We'll do that another time. You're talking about David? We'll have David another time. Yeah, he'll come on at some point. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So, look, if you have an unexplained encounter sighting, just like I say every week, contact me through the Phantoms and Monsters blog site. And thanks to each and all you for watching and chatting. And if you made a donation, it's truly appreciated. Your support is what makes all this possible. Please like, subscribe, and share. And look, become a member. It's only $2.99 a month. We are in the process of getting some things together for special perks for the members. We are working on setting up a new site, and it's going to take some time, but we're going to have an e-commerce site and a few other things going on with that. And in the meantime, if we get to the point where we can have something like that up on the YouTube channel, we'll do that. Now, if you have a sighting or encounter report that you would like to be considered for the personal reports show, or even post it at Phantoms and Monsters, feel free to forward your email to me at Lon Strickler at phantomsandmonsters.com. So, thanks for coming on tonight. I appreciate it. So until the next time we meet, stay healthy and have a safe and enjoyable week. Good night.